The federal government yesterday said it was studying Wednesday's ruling by the Supreme Court that halted temporarily the move by the federal government and the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to phase out old 200, 500, and 1,000 naira notes from February 10. In a response to inquiries from these days, Dr. Jibrin Umar Gwandu, who is a special advisor to the Attorney General of the Federation AGF and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami SAN, stated that the federal government is studying the ruling and will take necessary steps within the context of the rule of law before the 15th day of February 2023, when the matter is adjourned for hearing. APC presidential candidate Bola Tinubu and Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai have praised the Supreme Court's ruling. Tinubu hailed the three APC governors for taking the initiative to institute a lawsuit against the CBN, and the Kaduna State government said it welcomes the Supreme Court ruling, along with millions of its residents. He said it approached the courts to mitigate the stress imposed on ordinary people due to what it called ill-timed policy of the CBN. Dr. Bati, lots to chew on this morning.
Okay, let's look at this matter again, which has generated such interest, considerable interest. The first point to be made is that the Supreme Court of Nigeria performs three basic functions. It makes laws, number one. Austinian positivism. The law is what the judges, the lawmakers say it is. J.L. Austin is called Austinian positivism. Number two, the duty of the Supreme Court is to also interpret the law. And number three, the Supreme Court, as I pointed out yesterday, also acts as a policy court. Yesterday I talked about public policy, the role of the court as a social modulator. And the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court is constitutional, is derived from sections 230 and 232 of the 1999 Constitution. 230 talks about the composition of the Supreme Court. Section 232 talks about original jurisdiction. So two issues in this case. What the state governments, the three state governments, Kogi, Kaduna, and Zamfara did was to invoke the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. In which case, if there is a dispute between the states and the federal government, then of course, you invoke original jurisdiction, you go all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court treated the matter expeditiously. Now, secondly, is the point about public policy. It seems to me that in this particular case, the court acted as a policy court to douse tension. People have been dying everywhere across Nigeria. People are, going to as far as taking camping gas to the frontage of courts. People are going as far as taking mattresses to ATM spots across the country. Part of the role of the court is to modulate the society. So they've achieved that objective in imposing this interim injunction until the determination of the motion on notice. They have not yet taken any decision. Now, the federal government says it is studying the matter. I read a story, in another breath, which says that the federal government is already challenging the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court on the grounds that they are saying that the matter should have originated from the Federal High Court, not the Supreme Court. Well, I think, the thing to note in this particular case is that, in fact, the Attorney General of the Federation is acting for the government of Nigeria, for the President of Nigeria. Section 5 of the 1999 Constitution says that, look, the President can delegate authority. There is delegated authority. So in this particular case, it's not about whether it should have originated because of the CBN Act and Section 251 of the Constitution, should have originated from the High Court. Section 251 of the Constitution deals with the exclusive jurisdiction of federal high courts. So if the federal government is going back to the Supreme Court to go and argue jurisdiction, they will be surprised that the Supreme Court will determine its own jurisdiction in the matter. But okay, to just leave the legalese. The main issue is that since this Supreme Court took this decision, there has been a lowering of tension in the country. I don't expect that more people will protest, because what the Supreme Court has simply said is that everybody should maintain the status quo antebellum. The same Supreme Court can reverse itself, but that remains to be seen when the case, appears before the court again and they begin to look at the details on February 15. But for now, we have seen one of the roles, one of the three roles that the Supreme Court can play to help reduce tension in society. And I'm sure that many Nigerians will be excited that tension has reduced, because there's no point that people should die, people should suffer, people should be in pain, in anguish, and suffer injury needlessly because of government policy. But we have not seen the end of it yet. Those who are jubilating, I hear that governor of Kaduna State is already saying, don't worry, keep spending money. He cannot, El-Rufai should not be so presumptuous to begin to assume the position of the court. In fact, he must be careful. He can be charged for contempt ex facie curia, because the court has not already taken a decision. So he's going to say, oh, don't worry, when Tinubu gets there, he will do this. Go ahead and be spending money. I know he studied law, but he's not in a position to be making pronouncements, as to the effect, the implication, and to how people should behave with regard to the law. People should be reminded that the case is yet to be determined.
Very good, you said that, Dr. Abati. When the ruling broke yesterday, a lot of public opinion was divided. And these were some of the things they said by legal luminaries. Number one, they cited the case of jurisdiction. I'm happy that Arise News telephoned, rep of the Attorney General, and they said they are still studying it. Let's see how that pans out. But a couple of other outlets reported that it's actually been taken to court. Two lawyers, Ghazali and somebody else, represented the AGF, and they tackled the case of jurisdiction and all of that. And they said he also started from the Federal High Court. There was also some other expert opinion about it. I think it was Fidelis Odita, King's Counsel, that was also speaking about it yesterday. He made mention, the case of jurisdiction and the determination, really, that, can the state government take the federal government to court, to the Supreme Court, on cases of monetary policy, and they will have to prove how this affects their citizens. Because one of the arguments is that this state government pay their members of staff salary, through transfers, not even going to take money and all of that. And there are some other parts of the argument that somebody will have thought that this state government will have even focused on their state, that when now do they care so much about the people? One of the state governors said, one of the said state governors that took this case to court, we know how he treated workers in the states. We know how he does not be able to tackle insecurity in the states. Zamfara State, for instance, most of the students there didn't write WAEC last year because that could not be paid for. So the rights, I'm sure, Dr. Abati, education is a right in the Constitution, right? Basic education is a right. So a governor that can deny the basic rights of his citizens to education, by not writing a very important terminal exam, can also take the federal government to court as regards Naira policy that affects people. So a lot of arguments have been made back and forth, but I want us to calm things down. And, this APC fighting APC, because yesterday, Bayan Onuga, spokesperson for PDP, called the Attorney General public enemy number one by quoting this story that the Attorney General is asking the Supreme Court to dismiss this case. I mean, how can an APC spokesperson be attacking the Attorney General and an APC government where one of their spokespersons, Versus Kiyamo, still serve as a deputy minister of state in that same government? So please, I want politicians to calm things down. The protests should stop, please. Politicians, stop inciting people to protest. The banks too should do the needful. Stop the connivance with the politicians, because a lot of people see through all of this. Let's calm down. After elections, Nigeria will continue. It will be won and lost. I will move on. It's not a do or die affair. Nigeria is nobody's father's home. This country has been here before many of us, and it will be here after many of us. So let's just calm things down. Yeah? It is well. Let's watch how these things pan out.
Anyway, about course of action. The technical word is course of action. The states have a right to say, if you have introduced a policy that is making people go onto the streets, damage government infrastructure, cause a breach of public peace, I think they have a sense in that regard to say we have suffered some damage. And that was the argument of the plaintiffs before the Supreme Court. But in any case, we'll see how it goes.